on TV8, KCCI-TV, Des Moines.
The good news is the Bradley is faster, more maneuverable, and has much more firepower than the old troop carrier. The bad news, say the critics, is the Bradley has turned out to be the proverbial camel, the horse as designed by a committee. Too big, too fancy, too vulnerable.
I can recall sitting in a room with Army generals in which they said, we don't want to test it because we know what'll happen. It'll blow up.
It doesn't matter if you're a basketball fan, stick around. You're about to meet somebody every kid on every playground in America is talking about. Michael Jordan, a $4 million a year superstar.
Somebody said that you do your own vacuuming, sewing, house cleaning.
Because we had chores to do at home. And I just grew accustomed to doing it myself.
The death of her husband was tragic enough, but when Mrs. Reynolds sued for damages, private investigators hired by Delta's insurer went to work. Lawyers representing Delta said in court hearings they intended to question whether Reynolds' infant son was really his. Miraculously, Bob Katz was barely injured, but his wife was paralyzed. Private eyes, who said they represented Delta, tried to prove that their marriage was on the rocks, possibly in an effort to make Bob Katz less sympathetic to a jury.
I'm Mike Wallace.
I'm Morley Safer.
I'm Harry Reasoner.
I'm Ed Bradley.
I'm Diane Sawyer. Those stories and more tonight on 60 Minutes.
This portion of 60 Minutes is sponsored by Ford and the new Thunderbird Turbo Coupe, the 1987 Motor Trend Car of the Year. Have you driven a Ford lately?
Motor Trend Car of the Year, Thunderbird Turbo Coupe. Ford consultant Jackie Stewart tells you why.
It's a rare combination of sophisticated engineering. A new intercooled turbo for extra power. Computer-controlled suspension for ride and handling. Anti-lock braking gives you surer stops. No other car in the world has all that standard. Thunderbird Turbo Coupe, Motor Trend Car of the Year.
Now with Ford's 6-year, 60,000-mile new car powertrain warranty.
Banker is America's largest full-service real estate company. And these days, you don't get bigger unless you do it better. Coldwell Banker, the home sellers, a member of the Sears Financial Network.
Is the Army spending $12 billion of your money on a weapon that could be as hazardous to the lives of the men assigned to use it as any potential enemy it is designed to destroy? Two men who worked on it say so, and so does a Pentagon colonel whose job it was to test it. That weapon is the Bradley fighting vehicle. The Army says the Bradley can race like a Jeep, handle like a sports car, fight like a tank, bounce over hills, swim across rivers, and fire 4 different weapons in daylight or in darkness. A fancy battle wagon with a price to match, about $1.5 million each. And when all the Bradleys the Army wants have been delivered, the total program will cost about $12 billion. And what of those 3 men who question how the Bradley was built and tested? They say their questions have cost them their jobs and their careers. 100 tons of rolling thunder, a platoon of Bradleys strutting their stuff. They may look like tanks, but the Army will get angry if you call them that. Tanks have more armor and bigger guns. The Bradley carries infantry, but it's not a pure troop carrier either. It can only carry half the ground troops that this old transport, the M113, could carry. The rest of the room is taken up by a big turret with a big cannon, a TOW anti-tank missile system, a heavy machine gun, and all the necessary ammunition, which is stored inside the vehicle where the troops sit. The good news is the Bradley is faster, more maneuverable, and has much more firepower than the old troop carrier. The bad news, say the critics, is the Bradley has turned out to be the proverbial camel, the horse as designed by a committee. Too big, too fancy, too vulnerable, too compromised by conflicting goals and design flaws that may prove fatal to the men using it in battle. Colonel James Burton says he spotted some of those flaws years ago and got into trouble for bringing them up.
I can recall sitting in a room with Army generals and civilian secretariat leaders in which they said, we don't want to test it because we know what'll happen. It'll blow up if we shoot at it. And I'd say, well, then why don't you do something about it? What are you going to do about that? And I get answers like, well, we're going to fix it down the road at the next block change. And I said, no, what you're going to do is you'll get up from this meeting, you'll go to another meeting on another subject, and you forget all about it. I just said, we're going to test it. That's all there is to it. And if some of them blow up, then you will have to do something about this design situation.
That design situation goes to the heart of the Bradley itself. It is made of a spaced aluminum and steel armor capable only of stopping fire from small arms and machine guns. But in today's little wars in places like Lebanon, more powerful weapons, such as the Soviet rocket-propelled grenade, or RPG, are everywhere. And the Army admits those weapons will pierce the Bradley's armor. And that raised the question of what would happen to the 9 men sitting inside a Bradley that's loaded to the gills with volatile fuel, ammunition, and hydraulic fluid. James Gordon Burton wondered about that too. He was a spit-shine Air Force colonel attached to the Defense Department's research staff, and he pushed the radical idea that all major U.S. weapons should be realistically tested to see if they actually work.
I can remember sitting in a major decision meeting in the Pentagon, I believe it was the summer of 1983, on a decision on which bazooka to buy, the modern bazooka for the Army. And they were directed to run a competitive shoot-off to see which bazooka was the best tank killer. And so they ran this test. There were 70 rounds from each candidate, 400 and some rounds were fired, and not a single round was fired at a tank. Not one round was fired at a tank, not even an empty tank, let alone a tank that had ammunition and fuel on board. They took these warheads and put them on a pile of steel, a block of steel, set them off, measured how deep the hole was, and then took that information and went to their computers. I know you're shaking your head. I sat there and I shook my head too. I said, these people are crazy. That's when I decided, no, it's time to get some real data on all of our stuff. The Bradleys, the M1 tanks, all our bazookas, our own airplanes, the F-15s, F-16s, the Russian tanks, the Russian vehicles, how well will our stuff actually blow them up?
In spite of resistance from the armed services, Colonel Burton would not go away. He became the director of the Joint Live Fire Test Program, and he chose the Bradley for the first tests because of its controversial design. He wanted to hit a fully loaded vehicle with anti-armor rounds to see if it would routinely blow up.
A lot of people got very excited when I first began saying that. We don't want to do that. It wasn't designed to withstand them. It's only designed to withstand small arms. And I would say, well, the Russians didn't sign a treaty in which they agreed to only shoot at it with small arms. The thing looks like a tank. It's going to be with the tanks. It has tow missiles to fight their tanks. So people are going to shoot at it with anti-tank weapons. You need to test it in the environment it's going to be used to see how serious the casualties will be and whether you can do anything to improve that.
The shot line for this round was into the left side of the Bradley.
This is the Army film of those first tests, in which live ammunition was fired at a fully loaded Bradley. What you won't see is the behind-the-scenes battle between Colonel Burton and the Army. First, Burton charged that the Army aimed the shots to avoid hitting the fuel and ammunition inside the vehicle.
The round caused injury to crew members and minor damage to the vehicle.
I said, it's time to stop picking aim points intentionally. It's time to put some randomness in this so you cannot be criticized for intentionally trying to skew the results. If you select the aim points by a random basis, no one can criticize you for bias.
Burton also discovered that the rounds being fired at the Bradley were not quite what they were supposed to be.
Well, I witnessed the very first shot up there at Aberdeen, and the explosion went off, and there was a fireball, and we went out and looked at the hole, and I was standing there talking to the technician, and I said, gosh, I expected a bigger bang than that. I don't know why. He says, well, that's because we used a small warhead. I said, what do you mean, a small warhead? He said, well, we've got little warheads and big warheads, and I was told to use the little one. And it turns out that it was not a Russian round that was being used. It was a round produced by another country, which was considerably smaller. But I was being led to believe that they were using Russian rounds, when in fact they were not. So I stopped the tests and said, go get some Russian rounds, which they did.
And then what happened?
Once again, the aim points were selected so that they would not intentionally hit the ammunition inside, but they did accidentally, twice.
And what happened?
Well, we lost one vehicle. There was a big explosion. There was an ammunition fire started. We were not able to put out the ammunition fire. It continued, and the vehicle melted. In fact, this is a piece of it. It melted into a pile of aluminum about 3 feet tall.
James Ambrose is Undersecretary of the Army. He believes there is no evidence that the Army tried to rig the live fire tests.
On the point of underpowered shots, we fired what we had of the Soviet rounds. We don't have, and the Russians aren't free-handed in giving us a complete collection of their latest things. A commentary that suggests that the Bradley is a highly vulnerable machine, and it's a terrible thing to put young soldiers in and the like, really should compare it with what the choices are. The choices are to walk to battle, to be taken in an M113, or to ride out on the outside of a truck or something. And I submit that the Bradley is a considerably safer way of getting there.
The Bradley is built by the FMC Company of San Jose. As prime contractor, FMC stands to earn more than $5 billion of the $12 billion Bradley program. Former company engineer Donnie Damon says FMC ignored or tried to cover up negative test reports on the Bradley. As the civilian liaison guy with Colonel Burton, what were your orders? What orders were you given by FMC in your dealings with him?
Not to talk to Colonel Burton, not to give Colonel Burton any information. Colonel Burton was kind of treated as a plague. Several times I had bought up places where the vehicle was lacking. It didn't meet the specifications. And I was told directly by my superiors to let the problem go, let the Army find it, and we'll let the user go ahead and pay us to fix the problem.
I did the testing. I know that deaths will occur under realistic conditions. I was in the Army. I don't want these people dying. They're young kids. 18, 19, 20-year-old kids. That's all they are.
Henry Boisvert was another test engineer at FMC, and he believes neither Colonel Burton nor the Army know the half of what's wrong with the Bradley and its ability to meet the Army's own specifications. A transmission that'll work in battle condition. Does it live up to it?
No.
An electronic guidance system.
Sections of it and portions of it that I was familiar with and tested did not meet any of the specifications.
The cooling system.
Failed the specification.
Heating system.
Failed the specification.
The swimmability.
Several of the specs it does not meet.
The swimmability. Yes, the Army required that the Bradley, a 25-ton vehicle, be able to cross rivers with currents of up to 4 miles an hour and with waves of up to 1 foot. First, the crew must erect a swim curtain or barrier. Then, the manual says, whenever possible, the vehicle should be pre-dipped in a shallow basin or pond to see if the curtain leaks. Then, the soldier should repair the leaks with a small patch kit supplied with the vehicle.
That's it.
Then, a gentle slope must be found for entry, and entry speed should not exceed 5 miles an hour. It's difficult to imagine all those steps being taken while the Bradley is under enemy fire. And if it is, both the manual and the specifications say it can fight back with its machine gun and cannon while swimming. Can it fire in water?
On the move across the river, no. If you rotate the turret with the gun, the weight displacement of that gun as you're rotating changes the attitude of the vehicle. About 14 inches, you'd be under a foot of water. On top of that, if you added the 1 foot wave requirement, you'd be under 2 feet. The gun has to be elevated, so you can't lower the gun because the gun barrel will actually strike the curtain, so you can't aim at your enemy.
Have you ever fired the cannon while swimming?
Oh. No, sir. No, sir. Not while it's swimming.
You can only lower your gun so far, and then you'd start shooting your swim barrier. Then you'd be cutting your own throat then.
Can it go 5 miles an hour in the water and survive the entry?
No.
Boisvert showed a tape of what he says was such a test at the FMC Center in San Jose.
We went in and a huge wave of water came over the curtain, over 200 gallons, several thousand pounds. The vehicle almost went down.
Okay, let's turn around and get it out as quick as possible.
It was frightening to watch. The drivers almost panicked.
The Army admits that 4 Bradleys have sunk and blames those sinkings on crew error or improper maintenance. No casualties have been reported. But Henry Boisvert points to hundreds of internal FMC documents he claims show the company knew about various test failures and did not report them to the Army.
I was told that these issues were highly political and that these would not be reported in the direct reports to the Army.
FMC cooperates on every occasion. There is nothing that we hold from the government or from the Army, and have never done in all of my 25 years of being here.
Rex Vaughn is FMC's Director of Military Contracts. He told 60 Minutes producer Alan Wiseman that the Army is satisfied with every aspect of the Bradley, including the swim capability.
The vehicle will always make it across the river, maybe downstream somewhere, but...
And on the occasions when it hasn't?
No, that's been... There has been a malfunction in the system that where the trim vane has collapsed, and we had a sinking.
You say that the guns can fire in the water, it can fight its way across the river if it has to, but it was never tested. Nobody's ever done it. I mean, how do you know?
Well, I know the gun fires.
But it might sink the vehicle.
No, there's no way it would sink the vehicle.
We then showed Vaughn a report in which the Army Undersecretary concludes, quote, "It is obvious that testing has been conducted with an eye to minimal satisfaction of individual specifications," unquote.
But what is minimal? If I satisfy the specification, then that is it.
He seems to be implying you just made it.
Well, that's all I have to do.
Back in Washington, Army Undersecretary Ambrose admits that many of the Bradley specifications were pulled out of thin air, and that the vehicle may well have been oversold to Congress.
Oh, I think there's a lot to that. The hype, if you will, the hyperbole. My conclusions are that the specifications are incomplete, and in some cases don't have particularly good roots as to where they came from. And I've told the Army appropriate agencies to go back over all of this and clean that up and find out what's justified, what's oversold, and so on. Now, we should have done that.
The fact that confusion still exists over what the Bradley is supposed to be able to do after 3,000 have already been delivered has outraged both the House Armed Services Committee and the General Accounting Office. Their reports sharply criticized both the management and the methods of the Bradley survivability tests. The GAO concludes, quote, "Operational tests have not yet demonstrated the vehicle's ability to survive when it is required to get close enough to bring its cannon into play," unquote. The Army has delayed those tests, publicly saying they need more time to plan them, but privately complaining the tests are unnecessary and will be done only because Congress has ordered them.
Now with the Bradley.
General Edwin Burba, Jr., Chief of the U.S. Infantry, says field commanders already know how to use the Bradley safely and effectively.
The Bradley is higher, and that makes it an easier target, and some critics will say that's no good. But what do you buy with that? Well, you buy the ability to see the enemy better. You also buy the capability for the mobility that you've just seen demonstrated here. This system can get from one covered position to another covered position much faster than any other vehicle that I'm aware of in its class. Yes, if a round penetrates the vehicle and hits that ammunition, you are going to get an explosion. But you survive not only from armor protection, but from mobility and firepower.
It's a very large vehicle, very high profile, very high profile. And I'm back to that business, you know. Why has the Secretary of Defense's staff allowed the Army to delay those operational tests? for another 2 years to find out how easy it is to see it and hit it.
Why?
Well, I'm asking that question. Why?
Why do you think?
Well, I want to make sure that they get that production line finished before any of that possibly uncomfortable information surfaces. I think the basic business of that Pentagon is to buy stuff, to buy equipment, procurement. And that is king. Most everything that the Pentagon deals with is shaped towards making that happen. And as a consequence, the emphasis, the priorities, the thinking is all focused on how can we get through the next decision point to make sure this weapon system is accepted and funded and it gets to go on to the next decision point. It's just big business in buying stuff.
By the time all the test results are in, almost all of the 6,900 Bradleys the Army has ordered will have been delivered to the troops. Some modifications, such as putting better armor on it, are being tested. But various design changes, such as storing fuel and ammunition outside the vehicle to protect the troops inside, and better swim capability, have been delayed indefinitely.
We disagree on the consequences. There are differences of interpretation.
Colonel Burton testified before Congress last year and submitted his own classified report on the Bradley, a report quite different from the one the Defense Department had put out. Burton says his civilian boss, Donald Hicks, was furious.
The night before, I got a call at home that Mr. Hicks wanted to see me at 7:30 that next morning, and he was upset. He was overwrought. You have to understand, he was under a lot of pressure in that job. He said, if I get any more calls from Congressman about you, you're fired.
Hicks, who has left his Defense Department job, does not dispute that. Did you say to him, if I get one more call from the Hill for a copy of the Burton report, I'll have your ass?
I was very unhappy, and that might have been what I said. I really don't remember. The fact of the matter is, I have nothing against Burton. I have only against Burton or anybody else that I feel will not use the structure we have and have to make this place work.
Did the Undersecretary of the Army, Mr. Ambrose, suggest to you that Colonel Burton be reassigned?
No, he did not.
Well, he
was not pushed out, and I was not asked to push him out. I was not asked to push him out by anyone.
But you would like to see him go?
I would like to have seen him be what I consider to be a player of the group, trying to work the problem properly. Huh?
Get on the team.
Get on the team. And the team was an honest team, wanted to do the right things.
Not long after his testimony, Burton resigned from the military. There had been 3 attempts to have him removed or transferred from his testing job. An Inspector General's report said those attempts had nothing to do with Burton's criticism of the Bradley. So what do you do now? Do you go and work for one of the defense contractors now?
Oh, good heavens, no. I do not believe in the revolving door. There's no way in the world that I would go to work for a defense industry. I just don't believe in that. I'm sorry. There's too much incest there, and I just don't believe in it. I'm retired.
But FMC and the Army have no such ethical qualms about that revolving door. This man, General Edward Meyer, was Army Chief of Staff when the first Bradleys were delivered.
The Bradley is a fighting vehicle.
Now retired, he's on the board of directors of FMC. This man, former Colonel William Highlander, used to answer questions about the Bradley as an Army spokesman. Now he answers questions about the Bradley as an FMC spokesman. And instead of encouraging sharp scrutiny of a company that builds a major weapon system, the Army eagerly helped FMC's Rex Vaughn prepare for his 60 Minutes interview, making sure Vaughn knew every question we had asked the Army's James Ambrose and every answer Mr. Ambrose had given. And what of those 2 FMC test engineers, Donnie Damon and Henry Boisvert? They were fired last summer in what FMC called a reduction in workforce.
So in the case of Mr. Boisvert and Mr. Damon, their being let go had nothing to do with their criticism of the Bradley test report?
Absolutely nothing to do with the criticism.
Boisvert is suing FMC for allegedly falsifying or altering test reports. The Justice Department has so far declined, without comment, to join that suit. Both the home and office of Boisvert's attorneys have been broken into since he filed his suit. Police have no suspects. Then several weeks ago, just after certain documents had been requested from FMC under Freedom of Information by the San Jose Mercury News, FMC claimed that it had been broken into, and those very documents, inspection records, and deficiency reports had been stolen.
In about 9 years, this vehicle will still be in production probably. There's already 3,000 vehicles. My son is 9 years old. He'll be 18. He's not going in that vehicle. He'll never go in that vehicle.
A postscript. 2 weeks ago, a Justice Department attorney who'd been looking into Boisvert's charges reported that her office had been broken into and that copies of some videotapes Boisvert had given her were missing.
The moment you see the award-winning Ford Taurus, you notice the difference in design. A difference that becomes even more dramatic the moment you drive one. Now we imagine others will eventually catch on, but they may never catch up. This is Taurus.
Ford, now with a 6-year, 60,000-mile new car powertrain warranty.
Jack Rafferty proves you just can't tell.
The fellas that I work with are pretty perceptive. They don't miss too much. No one had picked up the fact that the gray was gone from my hair. It was that simple. No one realized I was using the Grecian Formula 16. It was so gradual. The Grecian has a natural look about it. It's not a dye, it's a clear liquid. The questions most asked by the fellas at work were, what are you doing? You working out? Are you losing weight? And unless I told them I was using the Grecian Formula 16, they never would have guessed.
Grecian Formula 16. You just can't tell who's using it.
Mrs. Walter Payton on Wheaties.
When I told my husband Walter they changed his Wheaties, he acted like a bear. Don't worry, sweetness. They're still low in sugar. All they did was take out 25% of the sodium. They still give you energy you need to pick yourself up on Sunday afternoons, and me, energy to pick up after you on Sunday nights.
Wheaties, yeah, what the big boys eat.
Cute box.
Tonight,
Kill it!
Adrienne Barbeau guest stars as someone cancels an obnoxious TV host.
Crime is my beat. Murder my specialty.
Murder, she wrote. Then the designing women find a bargain that's a steal.
You mean you're used? You're one allotted call to phone the beauty parlor.
Followed by...
What a family!
The new comedy, Nothing is Easy. Then the cops want to make him a snitch.
You get somebody else to be your bait.
A killer wants a front-page story. Hard copy.
It doesn't matter if you're a basketball fan, stick around. You're about to meet somebody every kid on every playground in America is talking about. Michael Jordan, a $4 million a year superstar, leaping, twirling, flying through the air like a man unleashed from gravity. But as Diane Sawyer found out, what makes him different is that in the cynical sports world, Michael Jordan is still having good, clean fun and making it pay. At the age of 23, he is the biggest commercial moneymaker, black or white, in the history of team sports.
When they think of Michael Jordan, I don't want them to think of that he's black or white. I want them to think of him as a person. I mean, I know that that's a lot to be asking from this society and the way people view things nowadays.
Michael Jordan says talent is what matters, not race. And he says in professional basketball, he's seen racial prejudice cut both ways. He says a lot of talented young white players in high school and college get discouraged because of discrimination by scouts who come to make the picks.
I had white friends that wouldn't get picked up because they didn't feel that they could play as good as the black guys could play. That's not fair, but that happens. When I play basketball, I play 110%, and a lot of things is done instinctively. You know, I don't practice it. I don't think you can practice it.
Are you thinking when you're up there in that helicopter poise, that levitation that hangs in the air?
I don't think. I just act. I'm up there. I'm just up there to score points or score the point. And to go up for a dunk or go up in the air, my legs just comes apart. Someone said that it's like a parachute. When you come down, it just slows you up when you come down to the ground.
Is it like being able to fly?
I guess it is.
Do you feel it, though? Do you feel that you're suspended in air?
I can't feel it. But, you know, I can look at the films in slow motion and look back at that move. And that's when the amazement comes in on my part, because I don't see myself, I can't feel myself doing it. It's just like with my tongue hanging out. I don't know when I'm doing it.
Your tongue hanging out is a habit, right?
I've been doing it for so long now that it's a habit that I just can't stop. And if kids try to do it and they bite their tongue off, you know, that's something that I don't want to be a cause of.
Because a lot of kids imitate you, you know.
And that's one thing that I don't want kids to do, because it's very dangerous.
The tongue, the long baggy shorts, the clipped haircut. They're Jordan trademarks imitated by kids everywhere, because kids know that Jordan plays for the same reason they do. He loves it. In fact, he's the only professional basketball player who has what they call a love of the game clause in his contract. It allows him to pick up a street game whenever he wants to. And believe me, this guy will pick up a game with anybody.
You ready? Go. Sign her up. Sign up.
Jordan's contract is with the Chicago Bulls. Since he arrived, the stadium, which used to be 2/3 empty, has been sold out every game. Everybody wants to see the player who's pretty much a team all by himself.
From North Carolina, 6'6" guard, number 23, Michael Jordan.
You know, we go into a city and they talk about Michael Jordan is going to be in town and the Bulls might come along with him. This is a team of Michael Jordan and a cast of others.
Doug Collins coaches the Chicago Bulls, a team that often watches Jordan with the same amazement as the fans.
The toughest thing that we've tried to overcome, and we're still working, is to get the ball to Michael and watch. And now you've got 4 guys standing in place, watching him work.
And work he does. He's the leading scorer in pro basketball. Top players average 20 points a night. Jordan averages 37. And once, when an injury forced him to sit out 64 games, he came back and scored 63 points, the highest ever in a playoff game, and that while playing against the best team in the league.
Ties the game. Oh, boy. 63 points, and you're looking at an all-time record. Oh.
But there's something else about the way he plays, the speed, the recklessness. It moved Larry Bird, the great Boston Celtics player, to say, "That's not Michael Jordan. That's God disguised as Michael Jordan." At the very least, it's a heavenly opportunity for sponsors.
Hey, Mike, is that really your car?
Yep.
Do you feel sometimes that all of you is owned by some company or corporation?
A little bit. I feel that I've reached my limits in endorsements.
His feet and the Air Jordan trademark belong to Nike for a cool $2 million. His wrist to watchmaker Guy LaRoche, his palm to Wilson Sporting Goods, his satisfied smile to Coke and McDonald's for $800,000. His short haircut to Johnson Cosmetics. Add in his basketball contract and you're looking at a $4 million a year man who says he used to be a gawky kid from North Carolina.
And are we really supposed to believe that Michael Jordan in high school couldn't get a date, no luck with girls, got cut from the varsity team? I mean, this is a sad story.
It sounds sad, but it's true.
No luck with girls?
You know, a lot of guys picked on me, and you know, they would do it in front of the girls.
What would they say?
Oh, they would joke about my haircut and the way that I played my tongue out. You know, just different things. And the girls would they would laugh at that. And right then I was dead. I couldn't get a date with anybody.
How times have changed, huh?
It's changed.
But what hasn't changed is what everybody says is the real Team Jordan. His father, a retired plant manager at GE, and his mother, a bank supervisor, who made sure that all of their 5 children finished college. They still attend every game they can.
The thing I do is look and try to locate them and make sure that they're there safely. And, you know, when I see that they're there, then, you know, I'm relaxed. I had great parental guidance when I was young. They taught me from day one right from wrong. and dealing with drugs and alcohol, that's wrong, and I know that what I do have to be right.
Ever been tempted yourself?
Won't do it at all. I just don't.
You don't use at all? You don't use drugs at all? You don't drink at all?
Beer.
You don't drink beer at all? Nothing.
I don't have the taste for it.
Somebody sitting at home is going to be saying, too good to be true. This.
I know, but I know what my lifestyle is, and I know how positive I want my lifestyle to be, and that's the way I live it.
Somebody said that you do your own vacuuming, sewing, house cleaning.
I always felt that I was going to be a bachelor.
That no one would marry you?
No one would marry me, and I end up doing my cooking, my dishwashing, my clothes washing, my vacuuming, and my dusting, and these are things that I should do at home because we had chores to do at home. And I just grew accustomed to doing it myself. And because I live by myself, I can do it, and I don't mind doing it. The sewing part, I don't do quite as much anymore because I do it if I have to do a quick hem or something on my pants. It's a temporary hem. I know how to do that very easily. I don't have a sewing machine where I can put the hem in myself, but I don't mind doing it.
But while Jordan is busy sewing hems in his pants, a sports management agency called ProServe is busy sewing up deals for Jordan.
What we've done in the past is usually with Jordan tie in the image of the Air Jordan line along with the McPack Fuel for Air Jordan.
ProServe handles a number of star athletes, but Jordan is a mini conglomerate and requires 8 people just to watch out for his money and advise him on every kind of contract from promotional to prenuptial.
We manage his time and his schedule. We negotiate all of his contracts. We have him on an allowance. We work with his family on his money. We pay his taxes. We pay his monthly bills.
And will you counsel and advise on prenuptial contracts and financial arrangements?
Yes, we will. And we've already talked to Michael about that in general and his family, that an athlete such as he would normally have a prenuptial agreement.
Right. Donald Dell is the chairman of ProServe.
Michael is changing the whole trend of a black athlete in a team sport where there are 9 players or 5 players or 11 players playing at the same time. It's a difference, and I think it's really in the consuming public's mind, and he's bridged that gap.
So Michael Jordan turns out to be the guy who really has everything, with the only question, how long can it last? The innocence, the blazing talent, and above all, the joy of a man who has learned how to fly.
Michael Jordan is Peter Pan?
I heard that. I can see myself being like that in the basketball world. That I wish that I can never grow up and I can be this age forever and play the game of basketball forever.
Right now, you can save big on Ford Ranger and Bronco 2 special value packages. And for a limited time, you can get 3.9% financing or $500 cash back on Ranger, $600 on Bronco 2. And if you have the cash back from Ford to option package discounts, you can save up to $2,165 on Bronco 2 and $1,811 on Ranger. Ford Ranger and Bronco 2. Build fun tough with value better than ever.
Rob Barlow's eyes, light hazel to golden brown. Slightly myopic, according to doctor's exam. Chose ultraviolet-coated lenses with a tint of gray. Rob Barlow's eyes, corrected, good-looking, and confident. Pearl knows how glasses work. Pearl cares how glasses look. Nobody cares for eyes more than Pearl.
60 Minutes, a CBS News weekly magazine, will continue.
Tuesday, your favorite stars share their favorite gags and a behind-the-scenes look at the all-time American comedy original. Smile, it's Candid Camera's 40th anniversary. Then, it's a dazzling evening of entertainment, glamour, and suspense when Bob Barker and Mary Fran host the 36th annual Miss USA pageant, live Tuesday on CBS.
This is CBS.
You know,
Sometimes we forget how lucky we are to be Americans. Freedom of choice, that's the American way. And that's why I like American Federal's IRA programs, where I choose the IRA investment that's right for me. American Federal's self-directed IRA lets me invest in stocks, mutual funds, and certificates of deposit. Limit my choices? No way. That's why my IRA is at American Federal.
You're on TV8, KCCI TV, Des Moines.
Take it along for the ride. The portable breakfast from McDonald's. Your choice of 5 breakfast sandwiches.
McDonald's has a great new way to eat breakfast. Always fresh and hot. 3 kinds of biscuits or 2 McMuffins. Filled with food you'll love a lot. Since you've got places to go and things to do, grab the portable breakfast that's just right for you.
The portable breakfast from McDonald's.
It's a good time for the great taste of McDonald's.
To make deals. Hurry down to your Subaru dealer now before this deal is history.
When information is in the hands of just a few, you're at their mercy. You play by their rules. But we think people should be in control, not machines. So at AT&T, we're working to combine computers and communications so you can get the right information to the right people at the right time. As easy as using the telephone. AT&T, the right choice.
Monday.
You're no psychic.
Goodbye, Mr. Nice Guy.
You're a weenie.
And hello, Mr. Popularity.
It was kind of exciting when you called him a weenie.
Newhart. Ben, Kids Exposure and Motion Pictures.
You're nude.
Ben's a sacred Kavanaugh rule.
The body is a beautiful art form.
In the privacy of your own clothes.
And on Cagney and Lacey.
I think we're going to pull this thing off.
A secret operation.
I bet we could put on a show.
Leaves Samuels laughing.
Down and dirty.
Monday on CBS.
If you or a member of your family are killed or injured in a plane crash, it's likely there will be an investigation of the plane, the pilot, and the air traffic controller. But did you know that if you sue the airline, chances are that you too will become the target of an investigation? That's the way airlines and their insurers try to keep damage claims down. And it's what happened to passengers aboard Delta Flight 191. It went down in a thunderstorm, the victim of a violent wind shear. Flight 191 bound from West Palm Beach to Dallas and Los Angeles. 137 out of the 163 people on board were killed. Among them, Paul Reynolds of Hollywood, Florida. His widow is Kathy Reynolds.
I saw it on the 11 o'clock news, and I didn't know until 6 o'clock the following morning that he was actually on there and that he was...
The death of her husband was tragic enough, but when Mrs. Reynolds sued for damages, she and her husband became the targets of investigation themselves. Private investigators hired by Delta's insurer went to work. Lawyers representing Delta said in court hearings they intended to question whether Reynolds' infant son, born just 3 days after the crash, was really his. And they questioned Reynolds' character.
They made him out to be an alcoholic, a drug addict, a wife beater, that he wouldn't be, that we wouldn't be together, you know, later on in life, that he wouldn't be a good father. Completely opposite than what he was.
William Hoppy is Kathy Reynolds' attorney.
When Paul Reynolds purchased his ticket, I don't think anybody said, by the way, if you're killed in this case, we're going to dig on everything we can on you and your wife, and we may say that the baby she's carrying is not yours, and all these other things that they did.
These home videotapes were made aboard Flight 191 by Bob and Debbie Katz. Up until the end, the flight had been uneventful.
See you later. As soon as we got into the clouds that were in front of us, the plane went violently out of control. It was the worst turbulence I've ever felt in an airplane. Like sitting in a roller coaster, the deepest kind of a roller coaster. And then we hit the ground.
The plane broke in half, the front section smashing into a water tower and exploding.
It was just engulfed in flames. It was unbelievable. It was horrible. People on the ground, burnt, dying, screaming, crying, parts of bodies. It's like an explosion.
Miraculously, Bob Katz was barely injured, but his wife was paralyzed. Delta was compassionate to the Katzes, and to its credit, the company saw to the needs of the relatives of the other crash victims. But it was inevitable that many would sue. Although she can walk now, Debbie Katz will need care for the rest of her life. And Bob Katz suffers from psychological trauma.
There's not a day that goes by where I don't see that big ball of fire coming down the airplane. I just keep seeing it over and over and over again.
But again, it was the Katzes who ended up on the receiving end of the investigation. Private eyes, who said they represented Delta, tried to prove that their marriage was on the rocks, possibly in an effort to make Bob Katz less sympathetic to a jury. One investigator even turned up at the door of his former secretary, Sandra Schuster, making what she said was an outrageous allegation.
They said that I was having an affair with Mr. Katz. He used the word sleeping with Mr. Katz. And when I asked him the names, he said he could not give them to me.
So how many witnesses did he claim to have?
3 or 4.
3 or 4?
Mm-hmm.
But you were sleeping with Mr. Katz?
Yes, he said that.
And that would come out in court?
Yes.
Was it your sense that he was trying to frighten you or intimidate you?
Yes, absolutely.
Sandra Schuster says she knew the story wasn't true. And you?
Not true.
True or not, what does it have to do with the plane crash? I mean,
I don't know. I was hoping that you could tell me. I don't know what anything has to do with the plane. I was not the pilot of the plane. My wife didn't fly the plane. We bought a ticket, and we're heading for San Francisco.
I just can't understand if going on a plane, waking up in the intensive care, paralyzed. I couldn't talk. I couldn't move. And then to find out later that they were accusing Bob of having an affair with her. I don't know.
I think that they are trying to, what we call, poison the well.
John Krupnick is the Katz attorney.
They're trying to get a jury to dislike the Katzes for reasons that have nothing to do with the injuries. And if you're successful in doing that, then it's been proven that the verdicts are lower, regardless of what the injuries may or may not be.
Scott Agaloff was 29 years old when he died aboard the Delta plane. He was a young entrepreneur who had turned a single toy store into a chain of large toy stores in Florida that eventually might have been worth millions. But when his parents sued Delta for the loss of their son, Delta told their lawyer the following.
They said $400,000, take it or leave it.
Delta attorneys alleged that Scott was gay, that he may have eventually contracted AIDS, and so he could have died young anyway. They said in court papers, even if there is no evidence that he had AIDS, he still could have gotten it in the future. Robert Montgomery is the Agaloff's attorney.
They knew better than that.
So they knew it?
They ought to be ashamed of themselves.
Was this just harassment?
Yes, in my opinion it was.
For the sole purpose of...
The bludgeoning, the Agaloffs, and the settlement. There was no other reason for this.
If Montgomery is upset by this, think about Scott's mother.
I feel that they have done something that is unconscionable. They have taken a young man who had his whole life ahead of him with every kind of possibility, and they've made him look dirty.
Should the airlines or their insurance carriers poke around in the private lives of air crash victims? Lee Kreinler, who represents some of the Delta crash victims, has written extensively on aviation litigation.
Routine investigation is commonplace. Anyone in this business on the plaintiff's side, as I am, for example, expects routine investigation. As soon as an airplane accident happens, the insurance carrier has a problem. It's in the business of paying reasonable amounts of money for these losses. The question is, how far should it go? It should not go so far as to investigating the sex lives or the background of these people in an odious manner, such as we've seen here.
Who runs the show when it comes to these investigations? Delta says it's the insurance company, U.S. Aviation Underwriters, which insures other airlines like Pan Am. Robert Alpert, who heads the claims department for U.S. Aviation, declined to be interviewed for this broadcast, and so did Delta Airlines. But Delta did tell us in a letter that it has nothing to do with the insurance claims process. It says all that is handled by the insurance company.
For Delta to blame it on its insurance carrier is not right. This was a Delta airplane. The passengers were Delta passengers. And Delta has chosen to place its insurance through United States Aviation Underwriters. So Delta cannot escape responsibility for what has happened.
They just did whatever they could to get the settlement down. Money. That was the only reason they did whatever they did.
But shouldn't they be entitled to fight for the lowest possible settlement?
I don't think they're entitled to anything. They killed him. I put him on a plane perfectly healthy and happy with nothing wrong with him. And they killed him, and there's nothing else to say. They killed him.
As for U.S. Aviation, it's not the first time the company's attracted attention. When a Pan Am jet crashed, destroying a good chunk of Kenner, Louisiana, it was the same Bob Alpert, the head of claims, who wrote a letter to victims advising them not to hire lawyers. CBS News' Bruce Hall read part of that letter to the mayor of Kenner.
There's nothing to be gained by a precipitous lawsuit.
That is an outrageous statement for that man to make. I told him there's people in this area that haven't buried their dead yet. And you better not be coming in here and forcing people to make decisions before they put their people in the ground. Now, this upsets me. I'd like a copy of it so I could see him about it today. That's a damn shame.
Back then, Alpert was talking to reporters, and he gave his side of the story.
Some people feel that lawsuits are necessary to get offers of settlement or to make settlements, and we're merely informing them that that's not necessary in this or any other air disaster.
Are you saying that on the average, on the accidents of which you and your company have been involved in, they will get just as much money dealing directly with you as they would going through the court system?
We feel that's the case, yes.
In the Delta crash, it wasn't just the passengers who were investigated. Allison Lee was a Delta flight attendant killed in the crash. Shortly afterwards, a private investigator hired by U.S. Aviation turned up in her neighborhood and knocked on the door of Cliff Leisinger, a close friend.
I didn't like answering these kinds of questions.
Well, for example, what did he ask?
He asked, have the police ever come, to my knowledge, to their house, to the Lee's residence? Did they drink? Do I know if they used drugs? Did they ever have marital problems or fights? That kind of question.
And your response to those?
At that point, after the first few general questions, I talked freely, and then when he started asking what I consider not very nice questions, I would give him simple yes or no answers.
Winston Lee, her husband, couldn't believe they were trying to find dirt on one of their own employees.
It started as a nightmare, and it just seems to be part of a continuing nightmare.
When an angry Winston Lee protested, he received a surprising letter from Robert Alpert of U.S. Aviation Underwriters. The letter, which admitted directing Equifax, the investigators, to check out the backgrounds of the passengers, said the investigation into him and Allison was a mistake. Alpert's letter says, "We expressly requested that Equifax not investigate any of the crew members who were aboard the aircraft." What's been the outcome of the claims made in the Delta crash? Kathy Reynolds was offered about $300,000 by U.S. Aviation. A jury awarded about $600,000, still less than she had asked for. In a separate trial, a judge refused to allow the homosexuality issue into court in the case of Scott Agaloff, and the jury there awarded his parents $1 million. Delta is appealing. Allison Lee's husband has just filed suit, and there has been no trial date yet in the case of Bob and Debbie Katz. And Bob Katz doesn't expect it to be easy.
People think you fall out of the sky, crash in an airplane, and they're going to just shower you with money. And the opposite is true.
And I lost him, and then I just started putting my life back together, and they shattered it again, but I'm not going to give up. I can't.
I don't care what they say. He is still the person that he was the day that he got on that plane. And I have to dignify that by standing up for him. He's not here to do it.
Is every plane crash victim or survivor treated the way those people said they were treated? Not according to Delta Airlines, who told us that its insurer has settled about half the claims resulting from the accident. That, says Delta, shows that its insurer is offering fair and adequate settlements. I'm Ed Bradley. We'll be back next week with another edition of 60 Minutes.
Finally, somebody put the strong medicine I want into an easy-to-take coated caplet. Anacin caplets. They give you Anacin strength, plus a protective coating for easy swallowing.
Anacin caplets are the first coated caplet containing aspirin, the pain-relieving medicine doctors recommend most.
The coating makes them so easy to swallow.
Anacin caplets have a protective coating for easy swallowing.
All that strength in a coated caplet. Now that's progress.
Anacin, doctor-recommended medicine in coated caplets.
This baby will blow the doors off anything on the road, just like a BMW.
Isn't she a beauty? BMW would build one like this.
You think BMW has advanced technology? Listen to this.
Your door is open.
Huh?
For about $22,000, you can own a BMW 325, or the hollow feeling of having settled for less.
We're making biscuits every morning at McDonald's for you. We're up at dawn, shoo-be-dee-doo-doo-wah. Got our aprons on, hop-bye, hop-bye. We're making up the dough. We roll it out, put it in a pan. Nobody makes biscuits like we can. With bacon or sausage, the eggs are fresh. If you say so ourselves, ours are the best.
Take breakfast by the hand with a fresh biscuit sandwich.
It's a good time for the great taste of McDonald's.
Later tonight, those designing women pay the price for an unbelievable bargain, followed by Nothing is Easy and Hard Copy. But first, Jessica zeroes in on the suspicious demise of a TV personality on Murder, She Wrote, next.
This Wednesday, it's a special 2-hour Magnum. And next Wednesday...
What do you want? I want the truth.
Frank Sinatra. Guest stars.
So far, you're on a lousy investigation.
This Wednesday on The Equalizer.
Could you help me?
A simple case of one woman in distress.
She killed my partner.
I was set up.
Explodes when complicated by romance.
Look out! Oh!
I will clear you, I promise you.
Wednesday on CBS.
This is no ordinary robbery. It's the work of Vietnamese gangs specializing in extortion and murder, threatening to become a nationwide mob.
We've identified contact people in Philadelphia, New York, Boston, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Falls Church, Virginia.
Correspondent Anthony Mason reports tomorrow on the CBS Evening News with Dan Rather.
This is CBS.
Most people don't do much more than sit on their money, because they simply don't realize how much more they could do. As a result, they miss a lot of opportunities, and that's too bad. Especially now when Edward D. Jones and Company has so many smart, safe ways for your money to make more money. Of course, you could just ignore your opportunities. Eventually, they'll just go away. Edward D. Jones and Company, Personal Investment Services.
If a fresh taco sounds good to you, how does this sound?